Okay, so this is the first tutorial I've ever done. Never done tutorial for YouTube and all that, but going to go over optimization for making maps, specifically to Ready or Not. If you have any questions, if I explain something that you don't understand, feel free to message me on Discord or in the comments because it's be on YouTube. First thing I want to go over is the view modes I used. I'm going to be going over and using throughout this tutorial. Main ones I use, pretty much only two, is um, complexity and density for light map resolution, and let's see, shader complexity for materials. So that, which is all right here, and starting off with, we'll start with textures. In textures, there's not much to go over. There is compression quality, which is right here at the top. You can set either one of these, or you can either change the maximum texture size if the texture can still look good at say this one's 4096, if it can still look good at 2048. I think this is compresses it. I'm not sure what this does. That's pretty much it for textures. Then you have materials. I guess I could use the same one. Actually. So I'll use this one and this complex material kinda. There we go. So what I want to do, like, not a lot of people talk about, that I kind of found um, through some hidden YouTube tutorials, is what the way to optimize materials is to go by the number of instructions. The more instructions you have, the more data it takes, the more memory and usage it takes to render a material. We have this most common material, which is just normal and ORM texture and a, a beta texture or a diffuse. And this one is going at 127 instructions, which is here in the stats window. It's just a basic surface opaque material. I usually look at this one and not these. These kind of can tell you a lot for specific volumetric stuff and lighting, but this is the main one you want to look at. Compared to something that's movable, same, it's unlit. Unlit is less processing, so it's default bit. This one's only taking 42 instructions, which is very low, but it still has a moving flipbook animation. One way to optimize materials is to either change the blend mode, shading model, or the different ways to use nodes. How can I explain this? If you have different nodes, like if I got rid of some nodes, use something else, it can either lower the instructions or increase the instructions. It's just kind of like finding a different way to do math, what's more efficient to um, find a solution to make a material. Um, so using different math nodes or whatnot will get you better instructions or less instructions. That's pretty much it for materials. That's the basics of optimizing materials. Okay, one thing I forgot is to tell how if it's the material is complex or not. Go into shader complexity. So these are all green, they're a little bit darker. Some are a little darker than others. This, I have no idea, it's running at 0. So this is a gauge on how complex it is. And this does not show on the thing. It's really just a, I'll have to go into that and see why it's doing that. Shader complexity, so now it's green because I fixed the material. These reds are high complexity materials, which are always transparent materials. It's very hard to reduce the complexity on transparent. What you would do is change it to an alpha or masked or unlit, I think, or modulate or additive shader type of material. So that's how you would view if material's complex or not. So next we would have lighting, which is the major part of this. Okay. So we have lighting, and there's only 2 types of lighting that we can use for ready or not, which is static and movable. So I'll go mostly over movable because those are the major heavy hitters on FPS. So we have all kinds of settings in here that we can do to increase performance or lower it. Down here at the bottom in the performance tab, we have max draw distance and max distance fade range. I usually always set this at 400 for the fade range. Just keep it at that. That's just the amount of time it or the distance on when it fades. It'll take long. I think increasing this will. Let's see. Let's see what happens. So I go into game mode. Takes longer to to fade in on fading. And then this is the distance. You want to play with this distance depending on where your character will be. So I don't want this light to go out when I'm like right here. So 0 is infinite. Actually, that's culling. So culling volume will call out the light to, or the volumetric sync. Yeah. Let me set this to 100. Very close. Oh boy. There we go. Okay. So we don't want that going out too far. It's a good distance. So you set it to where like the player can't see it anymore. Probably like when I get into this building. So let's decrease this. Until you can't see the light. There we go. So just keep playing with these settings until I get the right distance. Okay, as I was saying, because the video cut out because I accidentally pressed the hotkey to pause the video. What I was saying was distance on dynamic lights to get correct amount of distance to fade out and kind of turn them off while it's not needed, while it's not rendering. You're in a different part of the map. You don't need that light that's outside because you can't even see it. The other thing I was going over while it was paused was these settings, which I explained with stag meshes in a few moments. But major thing to change is um, shadow resolution scale, which gives you softer um, shadows, um, or more harsh shadows. And that helps a lot with performance, especially for dynamic lights or movable lights. Okay, so these I've changed for, these are static lights, which are almost exactly the same as movable lights, but I don't change the performance, distance, range, and all that because they're baked into the lighting. To optimize those, you would change the right light map resolution on your meshes, um, which I'll go over real quick. Uh, the density, light map density. Um, some meshes, depending on how big they are and how small they are, it depends on the resolution and the color of it, which is okay. So blue is the lowest resolution and high is red. And to set that, you would go on each mesh, or you go into the stag mesh and go down here to resolution and general settings and set this to accordingly. I would always set it in the stag mesh viewer because if you have multiple one of these, it won't change all of them. It would only change the particular one when you set it in here and override in light map resolution. So try to always set that in the stag mesh viewer. So you want most of your meshes green. Green is good. Um, red is okay, but it's just unnecessary. Um, so that's pretty much how you would set resolution for stag lights. You'd have to work with the light, static light itself, and the meshes in order to get like correct lighting and also optimize lighting. Um, just because there's large meshes that are still blue doesn't mean it's going to be bad resolution. Like this is 2480. So just because this mesh is large and it's still blue and green in some areas, it's just bad light maps. This can still work though. This is a 2048 texture or light map texture, which is pretty high, but that's usually how large meshes are. I haven't optimized this mesh yet, but you don't want to make sure your meshes are at green because you're going into 4D96, which is a lot of data to process. Um, so I try to find a median. If it looks good when if you don't have jagged edges and the lights look good on the mesh, here it does, and the light map looks bad and all, but um, it looks decent. It's not all garbage and garbage looking. So yeah, just you gotta find a medium point and not try to use too high of textures for light maps or resolutions. Um, for this, as I was going over the movable light, let's see, I reduced the shadow bias and the slope. These settings were good for what I was trying to do. So play around with these settings. Mostly the resolution scale. I increased this because I was getting jagged edges here, pretty bad ones. Um, let's see, what was it? Okay, what I have next is culling volumes, which are these. And the way to get these, go into the place actors tab and go into volumes. Call distance volume right here, and you place this into the world and place it over whatever mesh you want to get called out at a certain distance. The way to be able to view that is by pressing G to go into game mode. So things are popping in and out of the map because of a certain distance from the camera, and this helps a lot with performance, like a lot. So I'll tick on FPS and watch my FPS go down when I get closer. So there's a performance hit here. I'm trying to keep it above 30 because my computer is just bad like that. This lobby room was a major hit. It was at like 10 FPS until I added calling volumes. So you just want to set the distance to certain meshes. Make sure nothing pops out too much because that would ruin immersion. So see if I can see. Yeah, see, I don't want those pillars to get called out when I have it set here. If I had it call out and I walked right here and it popped into view, then that would be immersion breaking. Here's a good example. So I'm over here. I know there's doors right here, so unless if the player left it open, I gotta fix that. But it's a good example of what not to do. But it happens. It's hard to get everything right. So once you placed your calling volume in here, go into the details window And you're gonna have a few settings right here. I think you delete one. You only really need one. So here's an example. I only have one uh, setting. So you would delete one, leaves you with this one. So size I leave at 0, and this call distance is what I play with. So I'm gonna call out this bollard, I think it's what it's called. So 0 is infinite, so it's still there. Let's see, let's do 100. So that's too close, so I have to be up and close right next to it to get to show up. So you just play with it until you get the right distance. So say I want it to call out when I enter this room. I would find the distance of this room. See, let's do 2000 to 1500, 19. So there, but I probably would want to do it when I enter this room. Maybe 3000. Okay, 5000, 4, 5, 2. A little bit farther. 3. I'll do 3, 4. So that's how you would do it. I mean, if a player goes out this way, so you would want to you want to check all the angles. So players are probably going to spawn right here. If they decide to go out here and then they start walking this way, they see that show up. So probably, so that's pretty much it. The major ones that you need to focus on your map for optimizing and getting better FPS for your map is culling volumes and the distance for your lights. Those will help a lot. Textures, materials, yeah. Having less transparent materials can help. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, message me on Discord or in the comments on YouTube.